Richard initially assumes Alejandro minimized the side effects of the implant, though he knows that even by doing that, it still won't meet the expectations of that person. The Chosen One compliments him for understanding everything right away. He then reveals that it's a matter of sacrifice, and this sacrifice is a human girl. The girl wielding two swords tells Effer that she is a kind wyvern, so there's no reason for her to feel sorry because it isn't her fault. The former hunter is eager to kill the girl quickly. Alejandro allows him to play with the girl as they are celebrating his release. The game now begins. The former reveals he was anxious at first, but the more he used the guideline, the more he began to like it. He believes the girl, his opponent, should be able to see that his level is higher than hers, and wants her to beg for her life. She knows that doing something like that would be useless, and isn't scared to fight. Meanwhile, Effer is scared but is self-aware that being a scaredy cat like this won't make her situation better. After all, she was the Ace Knight Wyvern that protected the kingdom. To rescue the girl, she decides to look for an opening when other worlders aren't paying attention, and then escape from here. She takes off the grazing muzzle and cautiously peeks out of the room. She finds the girl using sublime movement. It appears like she's dancing in the air. The former hunter isn't impressed at all. He wants to intensify their fight even more. She replies that if that's the case then he shouldn't have taken some time with his appearance. The former hunter is bewildered as the girl cuts his hair with her sword, and he couldn't even notice. Leslie wonders if the girl also has an artificial guideline. Alejandro remarks that it doesn't make sense that she's at such a high level at her age, without even having an artificial guideline. She feels that even a level 5 difference won't matter much if she's of that caliber. She wonders why Alejandro wanted to show off that guy, who only looks good enough to use as an experience. He asks her to take a closer look. The former hunter's rage reaches a new level that he completely ignores Alejandro's order to stop. Leslie is astonished to learn Alejandro used the human extraction technique, which has turned the mad hunter into a Tatiro. He reveals human extraction technique involved creating half human and half monster. This nullified the side effects of the implant. This chimera transforms when they try to use their skills. The only way to get rid of the implant's side effects is by utilizing the human extraction technique. The former hunter, turned into the half Tatiro, attempts to attack the girl, but the girl uses her special lightning ability and sends him unconscious. She informs the judges that she has stopped the test due to the opponent losing consciousness. Alejandro reveals they won't be able to use him and instructs the girl to take care of it before it runs wild again. The half Tatiro regains consciousness and announces that he is fine, only to get slayed once again. Effer was spectating from the get-go and witnessed the girl who was being kind to her kill the former hunter. Even though the former hunter looked like a monster, he was still a Latinian. Moreover, the girl followed Alejandro's order without a second thought. Richard remembers Alejandro mentioned that the girl was blind, and presumes that the magic swordsman skills and sword skills must have been executed using the guideline. The Chosen One reveals the girl's senses are extremely heightened. Richard wonders if that means the artificial guideline is a success, and he's curious why Alejandro hasn't reported it to that being yet. The Chosen One reveals that when a person with an artificial guideline implanted in them kills an opponent, they can't gain any experience. Leslie concludes that it's a guideline that can't absorb experience. But before she can share her opinion, Richard intervenes and remarks absorbing experience points from defeated opponents to level up isn't only possible for Earthlings, but also dungeon monsters. Alejandro adds, this is why they have tried to experiment on dungeon monsters as well. But as they can see, there are still side effects. Richard claims that ability originates from another source. Alejandro assumes he is referring to the dragon's core. Since they agreed with the greater dragons, they were unable to test it out. But if there's a traitor, then the story changes. Richard throws an artifact toward him and reveals that the madam has given them this unique item for when they exterminate that greater dragon. Leslie reminds them that this item dealt with Lich and wonders if he would be able to handle it with his level. Alejandro calls him generous because being given an artifact is great, but to be given a unique item is a paramount feeling. Richard plans to inform that being that they are close to completing the artificial guideline. He and Leslie leave since they have some work to do. Before leaving, she reveals feeling jealous because Alejandro gets to catch a greater dragon. Plus, if he ends up making the artificial guideline, then his popularity would skyrocket. He, now all alone in the room, is thinking of the potential risks behind what he has been given. If he doesn't find it, then he will be responsible. He admits to becoming a pushover. Alejandro is thinking about how to find a dragon in human form without any location skills. He commands the girl Ellie to tell the wyvern to come out and clean up the corpse. He then also leaves. She opens the door to the small room where Effer was kept, but finds no one inside. Meanwhile, the wyvern is running for her life. She surprisingly had heard everything from Richard, Alejandro, and Leslie. Additionally, she also found out that the girl is also Alejandro's subordinate. She thinks everyone is crazy and is aware that if she stays here any longer, so she attempts to get out of the city as quickly as possible. Just as she's at the door that leads outside, she bumps into the girl from earlier, who stops her. Ellie closes the distance between them and hits her with lightning magic. However, Effer escapes her attacking range just in time. She feels relieved that the airstrip was short, and believes that it would have been over for her if Ellie knew how to fly. Abruptly, the girl with the artificial outline throws a lasso, which attaches to Effer's leg, and then throws herself in the air. Ellie tells her that she cannot go any further. Effer shouts she hates skies that are restrictive, and this is the first time she spoke in front of someone other than Han-Bin. After this, the wyvern attains an even higher altitude, and then cuts the leash, sending the opposition side plummeting from the sky. Effer plummeted her knowing she would be able to land safely because she's a magic swordsman. She initially feared there would be archers at the top, but now has confirmed that there is nothing there. Elsewhere, at the Crafter Valley dungeon's lowest floor, Han-Bin is fighting some insect-like creatures. He is fighting the monsters to not kill them, but to toy with them. However, he accidentally kills a monster when he forgets to adjust his strength. In a matter of moments, he is surrounded by several more insect-like creatures. He is aware that this isn't the time to take care of them one by one, as they are enormous and in large numbers. Han-Bin is forced to use Passing Through, a skill where he holds his weapon high up and passes underneath tall monsters, subduing them. It's weak to kill them, but he thinks that's one of its advantages. He has cleverly piled up the dead bodies without physically straining himself, and leaves the rest to Atis. The magician arrives and starts burning the life force of the monsters. Han-Bin is surprised because he has never seen anything like that before. He wonders how his dear friend is feeling. Atis apologizes for stealing his prey, but he tells him to not worry. It's good for him in the future if he levels up. Han-Bin expresses his thoughts, wondering why his level isn't going up. The mage points out there's no way his level would increase that easily. When Han-Bin questions him about the basis of this conclusion, Atis describes how levels reflect a being's overall ability to control the flow of its life force. It makes sense that leveling that up would be like replacing one's skeletal structure. Han-Bin thinks he knows that, but dragons can gain experience whenever they kill opponents. Atis corrects the notion. Dragons don't absorb experience, they take in an enemy's life force and absorb that into their dragon's core. However, this force can be extremely unstable and in a way has a life of its own. Therefore, to level up, dragons like him need to deal with that unstable life force. If they absorb more than they can handle, they will die because of the explosive nature of life. Han-Bin wonders if Atis mentioned having a limit to what he can take in. Atis agrees he is right and adds even water can kill if it is taken too much. He feels excited thinking about how he finally will be able to level up after 15 years. Han-Bin casually asks him his age. Atis drops the bomb. He is turning 150 years old this year, making him scream old Gramps. He casually remarks that 150 years old is considered to be an adolescent because dragons can live past 1,000 years. Astonished by it, Han-Bin wonders what level an old dragon can get up to. The mage admits he isn't sure. There's no way to confirm a dragon's level. Still, he's convinced they both are in a similar predicament. Han-Bin guesses it's because they also don't have anything to hunt that will increase their levels. The dragon agrees. There aren't a lot of opponents high enough to hunt. Plus, it's riskier. Not only that, but older dragons require an unbelievable amount of life force to help them develop. Han-Bin wonders if it would be fine to stop leveling at that point. Atis disagrees. Greater dragons aim for greater power. They realize that continuously absorbing a small life force is useless in helping them level up. Han-Bin is experiencing the same thing. No matter how many level 25 hunters he hunts, it won't give him any experience. It finally counted when he killed a monster over level 50. He understood the subject he was being enlightened about. He learned that the greater dragons believed gathering a great many life forces in a single location was the solution. They call it the life force well, and humans call it the dragon's nest. Excited, he wonders if someone like him can go there to level up. Atis crushes the idea because there's no way he can safely venture there without the protection of Dragon's Core, since the physical body cannot absorb the life force. The energy of the force will cause the body to burst, but also cause it to regenerate, thus beginning a painful and vicious cycle. This is why Life Force Well is like an impregnable fortress, and Effer getting tangled in this proves it. Ellie is witnessing her suffering but she can't help her. Some people serving Alejandro come running toward her, urging her to get inside. Seeing her concerned about the wyvern, they assure her that if Alejandro didn't tie it up, then it means it has no more use. Moreover, they can't risk someone important to the Chosen One getting hurt. She then decides to go with them. Meanwhile, Effer finally regains consciousness, and just as she wonders what she is doing, someone calls her name from behind. The new year has arrived on the Latina continent. Atis, now 151 years old, doesn't mind sharing his age one bit. Over in Onpur City, Berkman and his crew are ringing in the new year with a Korean-style BBQ feast. The celebration extends everywhere, from the Dark Brotherhood to the Valtera family, and even in Hayton. The voice Effer just heard reminds her of the other worlders who raised her. She recalls being named Effer by those hunters, especially the captain of the party. Even though it was a controversial decision, she liked her name. At present, the person who rescued her is Captain Baldy of her previous party. Captain Baldy asks her to not call him Baldy, as he is the captain of the Sky Dragon Knights. She gets emotional seeing the captain of the Sky Dragon Knights alive. He wonders aloud why is the party's ace crying. She dismisses his question with a silly answer and then asks him about the location of the other hunters. Captain reveals it's not the members' time to come out yet. The crime of not being able to protect the prince, and the punishment for that crime was executing the entire Sky Dragon Knight squadron, including its captain. She suddenly finds a muzzle strapped over her face. Bewildered, she blurts out to no one in particular that the captain is innocent. The captain tells her that she's a smart kid and has a lot of knowledge, but she's also suspicious of others. The captain gives her a piece of advice to trust people sometimes, because if some dust particles get into her eyes, someone besides her needs to wipe those tears away, even if it's just metaphorically. She starts falling from the sky, but at the right moment, Ellie steps in and saves her. She rushes to check on Effer and is relieved when she finds out she is awake. The friendly wyvern received a mass amount of life force which caused her force to be in a state of chaos, but for now she suggests they should heal her outer injuries. Ellie asks a worker to bring a potion on it, but Alejandro himself arrives, refusing to let her use the potion on Effer, thinking they would just waste it. He reveals he was halfway out but returned when he saw a flash in the sky. The Chosen One asks Ellie to abandon Effer, because it's an amount of life force that's difficult for even dragons to withstand, so a wyvern has no chance, and to use a potion to save a single wyvern would not be worth it, and claims he doesn't even have one with him at the moment. He thinks it might be kinder to put Effer out of her misery. Left with no choice, Ellie approaches the wyvern and has her close her eyes. She wants Effer to imagine that she's a dish that's overflowing with water. Next, she asks her to slowly form the water into bubbles of marble, and says that she will no longer be feeling the pain. The feeling just comes naturally. After this, Ellie unexpectedly cuts open a wound on her arm, and then demands Alejandro give her a potion. She's prepared to leave another big cut on her arm. Annoyed by her antics, he says that he would give her a potion but just this once. She then shows gratitude to him. After some time, she treats Effer using a potion and some bandages. The wyvern believes Ellie is scheming something that's the reason why she saved her. Ellie claims that she indeed has a reason. She asks Effer if has she ever raised plants before. The wyvern replies that she has a small garden. Somehow she concludes she is going to get eaten by her, but she calms her down by saying she doesn't eat her flowers. When Effer questions why is she raising them in the first place, she reveals she is blind and can only see the world through the artificial guidelines since. She reveals not being able to see any colors, but she can see Effer's name. However, it's difficult for her to see inanimate objects, so she has been growing plants. She explains they don't water plants with diseases or ones that are completely withered dry. But in contrast, Effer is alive even after absorbing a great amount of life force. She wonders if it is the reason why she asked for the potion. Ellie clarifies that most people, including those with the guidelines, may believe that the wyvern was just lucky, but she feels the life force circulating inside Effer's body. Ellie suspects Effer has a dragon core, and when she tells this to her, the wyvern disagrees, claiming to be an ordinary wyvern. She suspects it because wyvern is a type of dragon species. Moreover, Effer is a very intelligent wyvern. She instinctively created a dragon core during the process of receiving the life force. At first, this was puzzling her, but she eventually realized that Alejandro had been looking for a dragon core, which further bolstered her assumptions. Ellie explains a dragon's core is the final item needed for the artificial guideline that's been implanted in her to be complete. However, she hid that from Alejandro and has brought Effer here. She wonders if the wyvern thinks of her as a devoted subordinate, even though she has betrayed him. Effer thinks that if Ellie says it like that, then it does seem like she is quite devoted to him. She also thinks she could be pretending. She is lucky that she's alive, so it would be impossible for her to say that she planned for all this. Effer is sure that she won't be able to figure out Ellie's goal if she keeps making guesses. She changes the topic, wondering if Ellie can perceive shapes through her artificial guideline, despite being unable to see with her eyes. She admits but wonders why is the friendly wyvern asking that. Effer imitates Alejandro to make the girl laugh, who she refers to as her older sister. Elsewhere, he has received a list of the hunters that have quickly leveled up in the past month. He tells his attendant that the person they're searching for won't be found on this list. The subordinate shares his thoughts, remarking that he believes the person they are looking for might already be gone from this place. He thinks it is very unlikely, because even if they did, they would have to head to the mid-continent, and traveling there is costly. Additionally, working as a hunter is the only way one can make enough money to save for a trip like that. The subordinate apologizes for bringing a list that is useless in this context. He suggests that if Alejandro is asking for one that stands out but isn't on this list, then a hunter's newspaper is what they should be checking. However, the subordinate believes the people on it, referring to Han-Bin and Atisa, are too low level. So these hunters are most likely not who Alejandro is looking for. However, the Chosen One has found them, the people he was searching for in this newspaper. Looking at Han-Bin and Atisa's photo, he thinks there's no way they would be able to stay hidden looking like that. Inside the crater dungeon, a party of hunters battles giant spiders. Brad and Martin are fighting up close, but the latter struggles to keep up. Brad wonders if his friend needs his help and asks him. Feeling insulted, Martin claims that he would be the first to finish, only for Brad to finish first. He then reminds Brad that ever since they entered the dungeon, he has killed more monsters. Brad refuses to believe that because he believes he has killed 10 more monsters. Seeking healing, they search for their teammates, Elia and Foel, only to find them trapped in a spiderweb. Brad instructs the girls to not move and says they will save them. Abruptly, the monster launches a distanced attack at him, which edges past him. The hunters are up against the monsters called Tarantual Knights, usually found in the depths of Crater Dungeon. Martin thinks it would be impossible for them to beat these monsters without buffs. Just before things could worsen, Atis arrives and uses his special skill, freezing, to freeze the monsters. Since he still hasn't exposed himself, the hunters are wondering why the room got cold all of a sudden. Brad guesses maybe the monsters did it, but his friend is sure this was not monster magic. Brad notices the monsters have frozen and appear to be dead. Atis cuts in remarking the monsters aren't dead, they have just lost consciousness. He and Han-Bin then reveal themselves to the hunters. Brad and Martin instantly recognize them. The mage makes it known that interfering in their hunt wasn't their plan, but now that they have arrived they will take care of the monsters, leaving the two hunters to rescue the spiritualists. Afterward, Han-Bin, Atis and the rest of the hunters leave for the dungeon exit. Martin expresses gratitude to their saviors and admits feeling relieved to have them both around. The mage is also grateful to them because they are showing them the way. Martin brings up the topic of hearing rumors about Atis being a fire mage, but now that they have witnessed a different kind of magic, ice magic, he guesses fire magic isn't the only thing Atis excels at. Atis comments that after facing a powerful ice mage, he did a lot of research in ice magic. The maidens, Elja and Foel, are fawning over our dragon. They introduce themselves as the party's spiritualists. Martin wonders aloud if Han-Bin, or more accurately, Velterra, is thinking of joining any parties, indirectly inviting him to their party. However, the Sword King refuses without any hesitation. Elia doesn't understand why he doesn't want to join them, even though they have extensive knowledge about the dungeons. Seeing Han-Bin persistently rejecting, the magician informs them that his friend doesn't like being distracted in his training, which is why they have refused all party invitations. Elja knows the importance of training but believes cooperating as a team is more important. Elja invites Han-Bin to drinks, but he respectfully declines. Foel prefers drinking tea while planning out strategies on their days off, and Han-Bin dismisses her too. He starts losing focus and says that maybe just once is fine. Atis looks at him with a slightly intense expression, feeling distrustful. A flashback reveals he and Han-Bin discussing how to get Han-Bin in the spotlight by having him roleplay as Velterra. The magician is sure that to gain recognition, they needed spectators, because no matter how hard they try without witnesses, the only thing that would increase is their records. If their records go up drastically without any recognition, then it will only raise more suspicion. From what Atis had seen, he expressed that the best way to increase the public's opinion of something is through rumors and one's image. Atise had decided to exhibit Han-Bin's overwhelming power by cooperating with other parties. By doing this, they will be able to convince others of his identity as a Valterian hero. This will also increase Han-Bin's chances of meeting the goddesses. The Sword King believed that at the same time, he would need to maintain a certain level of mystery to decrease the chances of his identity being exposed. Fortunately, the magician informed him that there was already a line of people requesting to cooperate with the Velterra warrior. As Han-Bin is calculating the odds of success, Atis plans to make him the most famous hunter in the city. At present he admits everything his dragon friend said came true. But there's one thing that didn't come true, and it's his popularity with girls. The girls want to hang out with Atisa, thinking Velterra will train on his own. But the dragon declines because he is busy with his magic research. Brad has a strong opinion that the job of a hunter is one where they sacrifice their free time to fight monsters in a never-ending battle. The girls clock that he is a bit jealous, and inform him that a jealous man isn't popular with ladies. Overwhelmed by jealousy and negative feelings, Brad calls Atis unqualified as a hunter. Han-Bin confronts him on his friend's behalf. The jealous hunter assumes the Valterian is threatening him now that he has criticized his master. He knows that everyone is looking at Valteria, but he doesn't care. Han-Bin dismisses his presence and opens the door behind him, which leads to mid-dungeon's magic source. Martin's initial reaction to the mid-dungeon magic source is rather surprising, as he had never thought it was going to be this close. Atisa has him explain that the crater dungeon most likely won't disappear even if they clear the dungeon source, as Crater Dungeon is a group of dungeons all located within Crater Valley. Moreover, there are more besides the one they are currently in, which is why clearing this magic source won't clear the Crater Dungeon. Han-Bin is relieved because it's too early to leave the city. Brad, standing beside him, spots an artifact in the middle of the room and is captivated by how visually stunning it appears. However, Martin reminds him that if there's an artifact, then there's going to be a boss protecting it. He responds by saying he is well aware. Soon the dungeon boss, a giant spider, reveals itself. Martin reveals the monster is the type to spit poison from the distance, and suggests they should attack its legs together. Brad is told to protect the ladies with a tease until they give him a signal. However, he doesn't like staying put and decides to rush things and starts running toward the monster, while remarking he will never let another group take his prize. Since someone has to protect the spiritualists, Martin gets Han-Bin to stay behind with a tease to protect the ladies, while he and his comrade take the offense. Unlike Brad, the Sword King listens to Martin and decides to follow his orders. Meanwhile, Atisi senses that something is off, but Han-Bin is just going to observe for now. Brad is planning to use the blitz tactics they have discussed before. However, Martin is against that idea and is irritated by how impatient his friend is. Brad then proceeds to make this a game, stating that whoever kills the monster first wins. Martin thinks now is not the time to be saying such idiotic things. Meanwhile, Foel and Elia are exploiting their spiritual energy to cast a protective wall and anoint blades respectively. They are shielding their party mates from the spider's venomous attack with their special magic. Atisa is surprised at how outstanding spiritualists these girls are, as they perfectly place the wall at the spot and on time, and were incredible with supportive buffs. Their support is making a big difference as they have made the monster unable to use long-range attacks. The two hunters in front think of targeting its leg before going for the head. Seeing them putting up a spectacular performance, Atisa knows these hunters can't hold a candle to his earthling friend, but they do seem like seasoned veterans. Han-Bin is aware of them being veteran hunters but feels that the boss is a bit weak. The spiritualist girls are happy now that they as a party have cleared the dungeon. Brad mentions that this is their first time completing a dungeon. He stretches his arm toward Martin for a fist bump, and then asks if he's up for heading to the 4th district, since that's their ticket to becoming top-ranked hunters. In the blink of an eye, the strategist of the party, Martin, suddenly vanishes into the thin air, taking Brad and others out by surprise. Brad lifts his head and finds a giant level 50 spider, the Tarantual Queen, which is about the size of the entire platform they are standing on and is, in fact, the real boss. The death rate in dungeons is actually not as high as hunters think. That's because hunters take commission according to the level of monsters they are required to subjugate. However, since hunters don't have any means of measuring a monster's level, surviving hunters would return and report every detail after facing them. Therefore, the more monsters are discovered, the more information that's available. In other words, this method is useless for unique creatures. This is why most hunters are killed by dungeon bosses. Brad is devastated after losing Martin. No one ever said anything like that in the Crater Dungeon. The Tarantual Queen attempts to use a beam attack to neutralize Brad, but Atisa jumps in at the right moment to save him. Brad is stunned to see the magician, who despite being on the same level as him, is protecting him with his magic. Atisa explains that he once had to deal with reflective magic, which sums up why he can withstand the monster's beamed attack. He reveals he doesn't have any more wands left. Shocked, the jealous hunter wonders just what kind of mage would sacrifice their magic wand. Moreover, the monster they are facing doesn't only deploy magic attacks. The Tarantual Queen takes a swing, aimed at Atisa and Brad. The latter hunter courageously steps forward, hoping he will absorb the impact of the hit and save him. Before things could go wrong, Han-Bin jumps in and blocks the Tarantual Queen's attack. Atisa learns that he has evacuated the spiritualists and they should be exiting the dungeon by now. Brad suggests that Han-Bin and Atisa should make a run for it since the Tarantula Queen's massive body would slow her down. He looks back and finds Han-Bin talking with the mage about how it's a bit risky to climb onto its back. Atisa assumes that the queen's outer carcass will be thick, and unless someone has Han-Bin's level of sword skills, stabbing through it would be a serious challenge. However, the Sword King thinks he won't be able to pierce through the monster with just one blow. Brad finally speaks up, asking them what the hell are they talking about. He suggests they should hurry to report this to the guild, because if they die here, other hunters who come here without knowing will end up dying. Atisa is already aware of it, which is why they need to kill it so it's no longer a threat to others. Brad is sweating excessively because of the eerie atmosphere he is in. He is speechless to see Han-Bin and Atisa calm, despite them being in a tough situation. He concludes they don't have much experience and tries to tell them that the monster they are facing isn't an average dungeon boss. Han-Bin abruptly tells them to cover their ears, before throwing his sword like a projectile. Atisa quickly covers his ears with his hands. However, Brad gets sent flying by the projectile's impact. Han-Bin's sword impales the Tarantula Queen, much to Brad's surprise, who thought of him and Atis as some inexperienced hunters. He initially assumes Han-Bin used a spear to penetrate the monster's thick skin, but soon notices that it is a broadsword, not a spear. As the sword begins to glow, Brad deduces the monster is about to strike and attempts to warn him. However, his jaw drops when he witnesses the monster exploding. The explosion's impact causes Han-Bin's longsword and Atis's wand to drop before the jealous hunter. He realizes that they stuck a wand on the sword and triggered an explosion. He is baffled by how creative their way of defeating monsters is. The Valtirian warrior gains 238,110 experience, which adds up to his total of 351,250. Looking at his guideline notification, he thinks he still has a long way to go. Killing hundreds of monsters like Tarantula Queen won't give him much experience. Han-Bin declares they are clearing the dungeon. On a suspended lift headed for the exit, the Valtirian is slightly bit annoyed seeing Brad crying. He asks Atis to do something about it. The mage tells him that since the guy is in shock, this is the normal demeanor. Brad admits he's exhausted. He shares that when Martin died, he was completely frozen and unable to react. He also confesses that he envies the Valtirian, because the Valtirians are strong from the day he was born. Atis tries to explain to him that even Han-Bin had to live in severe conditions. However, Han-Bin stops him to give him a pep talk himself. He calls him a spearman and demands he shouldn't talk about the unfairness of the world, because isn't it obvious that one must do their best to survive? And if luck is on your side, you will stay alive and get stronger. Which is the same with him. He thinks that it's because of Brad's luck that he was able to meet them and stay alive, and if fortune wasn't on his side, then he would have been dead. Brad vents his frustration at Han-Bin, saying he is right. If it wasn't for him, then he would have died. But what about Martin? He asks him if was he trying to say that his friend was unlucky, so he died. The suspended lift reaches the designated destination, where Martin and the spiritualists are waiting for them. Seeing their teammate being disrespectful to their saviors, his teammates start beating him. The Sword King realizes that they forgot to tell Brad that they saved Martin too. Martin explains that Han-Bin grabbed him as he was thrown out and cushioned the blow as they crashed against the wall, which is why he was lucky and lived. Brad wonders if is that even possible. Martin replies that whether it is or not doesn't matter. Realizing that he stepped beyond his boundaries, the rude guy apologizes and the entire party say a heartfelt thank you. Han-Bin acknowledges their appreciation and then decides to leave. Martin nags his friend for angering their savior, but Brad doesn't know how to deal with this situation now. Atis tells him that they have an offer for him. He discloses that they can't use the artifact they got from the Carter dungeon and are planning to sell it, but since his companion suggested checking with Brad first, he wants to see if they're on board. Atis further says that they will offer it for half price since he will be doing them a favor by buying it from them without having to go through any hassle. When Brad asks the mage why is the Valtirian offering this expensive weapon to him, he reveals that is also because of good fortune. Brad and the rest of the party are excited to finally have one artifact, and they are eager to check what abilities it has. Han-Bin, who gave off the impression of being angry at first, has a big smile on his face. He feels that it would be saddening if the hunters died after being saved by them. Besides, Han-Bin wouldn't have been able to use it because it has a level restriction. As the Sword King is recollecting what he had just experienced, a coachman and an unknown man appear to be watching him from their cart. The mysterious man hopes they will be willing to cooperate. The party of hunters asks Atis to pass on their gratitude to the Valtirian. Han-Bin, who's listening in from the outside, is glad that he did good work and got his fame increased. He feels like he killed two birds with one stone. His goal is to become famous enough to catch the attention of the goddesses. Once he earns their trust by helping them out, his contribution level will rise. Eventually, he plans to team up with them and get his revenge on the demon god. Atis is approached by the strange man from the cart. The man gets the mage to hop onto the cart, while Han-Bin assumes his companions has already left. The cart suddenly starts moving, and Atis, confused, asks why. Since he only hopped on because the man said he wanted to talk, the mysterious man replies that he also didn't think it would be this easy to escort him, making Atis question who is he. The mage is in a tough situation. He has used up all his magic wands, even the backup ones. He got careless because this was a densely populated city. The man calls him wise for not taking out his wand and tells him that he looks like his older sister Adora Bannister, surprising Atis. The man replies that he knows about Adora, even though there isn't much information available about her. She fought the evil Greater Dragons with the 4 heroes 10 years ago. As a result, this created Upper Draconium, an organization that keeps an eye on the Greater Dragons. If she was alive today, she also would have received the blessings of the goddesses. Atis demands he stop talking about his sister to grab his attention and get to the point. The man apologizes, explaining that he was simply concerned after hearing rumors that the current head of the Bannister family had been living in seclusion for the past 10 years following his sister's death. However, seeing Atis in person has reassured him. The dragon is confused, wondering what is he talking about. The mysterious man cuts in and remarks they have arrived. He reveals he has selected a location where there hardly are any humans, and states why don't they head inside to talk about the details. Atisi pops out his head and realizes that they have arrived at his house.